Welcome to the Stormsurf video surf forecast for the week starting Sunday, September 30th. Looking at significant wave heights for the South Pacific Ocean, we see actually some seas south of New Zealand in the 33, 34 foot range, part of a series of gales that are expected to push under this area, not expected to make it very far into the South Pacific, but still should be capable of generating some swell. Let's get into the details. As usual, we'll start our tour looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they do form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough that is a push in the jet to the north. Well, we don't really see that. In fact, if you look at the big picture here, we see the exact opposite. The southern branch of the jet right here, that's the northern branch. It's the southern jet that is the influential one. It's actually pushing south, it's ridging south. And when you get a ridge like this, between the two jets, the two branches of the jet, that typically creates high pressure. Not good for creating surf. But you do see, I wouldn't call it a trough, but at least the jet is north of the ice line, somewhere around, I don't know, 63, 65 south, right along here. The jet is a bit north of that and with a little bit of energy. So that would help to support some sort of a clockwise flow aloft and down at the surface, and of course that's the hallmark of low pressure in the southern hemisphere. Low pressure, of course, generates wind if it's deep enough, and those winds generate seas, and the seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, turn into swell. Swell, when it hits your beach, creates surf. All right, so we'll call it a prototrough right here south of New Zealand. And we're sort of cheating because we know that there are some seas of interest here, and undoubtedly there is some fetch and some low pressure. And we'll sort of roll this out, and you see, well, it kind of looks like a ridge pushing south again. And so no hope anywhere but maybe under Tasmania as we get into Sunday night. And then Monday, hey, there's almost a real trough with some wind pushing up into it. It's that north wind, or the south wind pushing to the north that you want. What is that, 150 knots? Okay, we'll take it. That could help a little bit. And then it sort of does this again, this zonal thing where it just runs straight west to east. But still, that would give us a little hope as we get into Tuesday. And then the jet lifts a little bit further north, and here we go into Thursday. Another trough starting to push under, but then this one kind of pushing a little bit further south, but still in front of that, maybe some support for gale development. And yet another little pocket of energy as we get into Friday and even into Sunday. Okay, we're a week out. The Southwest Pacific is looking better now. And when is it? It's the end of September. Looking better now than it has pretty much all summer. Hard to believe. Anyway, okay, let's go take a look down at the surface, see what's going on. Here we go. Surface level pressure, surface level winds. No big surprise. 40-knot winds right here. Pushing from the west, almost a little bit from the southwest on this side of the low. And then from the northwest, that's of no interest. We want fetch pushing north towards Hawaii, California, wherever you happen to be, even Tahiti. Anywhere pretty much to the northeast or north is what we want. So we have a little bit there. You know, if you get basically straight west winds, still some swell will radiate north, but not as much. You really want the fetch pushing north, and you want the core of the low right there. You want that to track north. Given the jet stream, and you know how it's just running zonal, west-east, no expectation that's going to happen, but beggars can't be choosy, so we'll just take whatever we can get. Look at that, hey, 45-knot winds. We get into Sunday night, again, aimed a little bit more to the northeast, and then here we go. Whoops, let's go back. The swell window really starts back under here somewhere for California. So what's that, 55-knot winds over a small area Sunday night. But notice that low kind of falls southeast. We really want it going northeast. And then another one. 40-knot winds right behind that on Monday. Lifting a little bit northeast, continuing. 35 fading out. And then as we get into Tuesday, more fetch developing behind that. But look at all that fetch is aimed southeast. It's back here. Just got to get into the swell window. Sort of doing it as we get into late Tuesday night. Pretty much straight west winds. So we get into Wednesday. Then things sort of settle down a little bit. But, oh, here we go again. Another one. Tiny area, 55-knot winds into Friday. Building 50 to 55 knots, pretty solid. And above the ice line, pushing again off to the east. Fading some. And then what? We're out So this is 30, 35 knot winds. It's only good for 13-second period swell. That will fully decay before it ever reaches Hawaii. Well, maybe Hawaii, but certainly not the U.S. West Coast. But trine. So look at this. I mean, just a steady stream of gales pushing under New Zealand. Now, we do know, we'll just sort of break it here. The active phase of the MJO is going on here. South or north of that, that's where you tend to get swell production during the active phase of the MJO. So it's no big surprise, and it's a pretty strong pulse. There's a full-on westerly wind burst going on the equator in this area, and it's no big surprise that that is feeding a bit of a storm cycle down here. We really want it to feed the storm cycle in the North Pacific, but we're not certain that the North Pacific is ready to do that yet. That is why we're focusing on the Southern Hemi right now. All right, going back in time just a little bit. So we're back almost a week, Monday the 24th. A little low-pressure system developed southeast of Tasmania, 30-foot seas, push north, building seas to 34 feet. But look at this, mainly impacting New Zealand. A tiny bit of it escaped around the corner here, 29-foot seas pushing north, and then pretty much fading out as we got into Wednesday. Small swells in the water pushing towards Hawaii, should arrive early part of this week, and then maybe into California. I mean, we're talking really small, you know, couple of feet maybe. That's surf size into Southern California as we get into maybe next weekend kind of thing. So no big deal. But let's look to the future. Right, here we are today. There's our little area of, what is that? 33-foot seas, max seas over the entire image, 33 feet. There's the location, and there's the max winds in that area too, 44 knots at pretty much the same location. Okay, so roll this out. That guy doesn't do a whole lot. Yeah, maybe a little tiny pulse of swell for somebody. Next system, they just start stacking up. Monday, there we go. What's that? That is 38-foot, almost 39-foot seas. Again, doing almost falling southeast, and 30-foot seas behind that. Look at this rather strong system building under Tasmania, but it's got to get like over in here. That's where the effective swell window starts. And there we go. As we get into Wednesday, what is that? 39-foot seas over and a pretty broad area of 30-foot plus seas there, pushing under New Zealand. So there's swell for that. That's probably, if this were to happen, this is like Wednesday, Thursday, probably 10 days, 9 to 10 days to reach California. So you're looking at not next weekend, but the weekend after that. Okay, something to look forward to. Not holding our breath. Continue out as we get into Friday. Another pulse. Oh, look at this. So this is kind of new on the models, too. This whole thing was supposed to die out on Thursday, and that's the end of it. Now the models have upgraded again. Oh, 42-foot, 44-foot seas, 45-foot, but they're kind of falling. Look at this. They kind of go from here down to here. That's the exact opposite direction of what we want. Still, just pure sea size should result in some swell, and then it looks like things start fading out. Okay, Southern Hemi, fairly productive, or at least forecast to be fairly productive. Here we are, basically in the beginning of October, and the North Pacific, not particularly productive. Let's go take a look. So we're going back to Friday, a couple days ago. Little gale formed off of North Japan, tiny little area, 22-foot seas. That built, we got nearly 30-foot seas on our early Saturday morning, mainly targeting Hawaii, but also some swell will reach the U.S. West Coast from about 295, 296 degrees. Then it fades out, and then you think that's it. Oops. You think that's it. Now also, so this is a good stopping point right here. Here's current image. Hurricane Rosa fading out off of Baja. Swell is in the water. Just as of 2 hours ago, the buoys started ticking up off of San Diego. So today's swell size was not as big as expected. Up in Northern California, there at the very best spots, there were some maybe shoulder-high peaks or something like that, mostly in the waist to chest-high range. Southern California doing better at top swell spots. But it looks like tomorrow there will be larger swell. Not huge, but solid swell. Something to ride, so keep that in mind. Another little system trying to organize south of Hawaii, of no interest really to Hawaii, but we'll see in a minute. And then was Super Typhoon Trami, is now making the curvature, so we're going to keep our eye on that, and yet another system below that. All right, so we're going to focus for the moment on the system that, remember, came off of, let's say northern Japan, made 29 to 30 foot seas, swells in the water. Now it is supposed to reorganize, create another small area of 28 foot seas as we get into Sunday night, and then sort of fade out. Now also look at the remnants of Trami. We'll go back just a little bit. There we go. This is a Sunday night. It starts building. Nothing huge. What's that? 34, 36 foot seas. Lifting northeast. Maybe some little tiny swell. Mainly since it's pushing this way, the Great Circle path into anywhere would mainly be California, and that's probably the most likely recipient, unless, of course, you're in the Aleutian Islands. Now, this other system off of Hawaii is supposed to build. We'll watch that. And it starts tracking north. Another system also forecast off Baja, lifting northwest. Now, this guy, I think he might make some sideband. We'll actually go back and just look at the model. You can see little sideband energy, very southwest angle, probably Kauai, if anything. Everywhere else probably be shadowed. Then it kind of dies. Most of the energy heading up towards Alaska. Another little bit of low pressure pushing in 18-foot seas. But this is probably the more interesting thing relative to California. But a tropical system on the wave models 132 hours out. Wouldn't believe it. And then, so that all that kind of fades, and then things get quiet. So, a lot of potential energy on the charts, but nothing that really looks like wintertime yet. It's more the tropical, sideband, whatever you can get kind of swell thing, or that one system that pushed off Japan, mainly for Hawaii. And then we're going to take a real quick look, wind swell and otherwise. Notice, low pressure here off of California, generating basically dead winds relative to California. And there is Rosa, south of Southern California, fading, expected to move into Baja and fade out. Notice the south winds building in not particularly strong, but no north winds is really the point here, into north and central California until that low dissipates, and then broad high pressure here as we get into Wednesday night, almost Thursday, 1024 millibars, starts ridging east. Let's see if it does anything. There you go. Then the wind machine kicks up on Friday and really starts blowing relative to California. Also starts creating easterly fetch relative to the Hawaiian Islands. And you can see as we get into next weekend, a windy mess for California. No wind really for Hawaii, but maybe some wind swell from this the easterly fetch off the south side of this high, now at 1030 millibars. And that pattern holds. You see this high is also blocking this tropical system here from, we'll actually go backwards a little. That tropical system wants to go north, and it can't. The high is just blocking it. So, and there we are at 180 hours. That is Sunday night. Still, much wind swell for California, much wind swell for the exposed east-facing shores of the Hawaiian Islands. And then a quick look at precipitation. We're just looking at California here. We're not talking any snow, but there you go. Look at this. That low pressure system off the coast supposed to drive some rain into northern California, we'll say late Monday night, and then into Tuesday morning. Solid rain from, we'll say, just south of Cape Mendocino to nearly 2 Point Conception. About mid-Tuesday morning, good solid rain, and that fades out. Maybe a little bit more, and some snow over the highest elevations. We're talking Mount Whitney type thing, above 13,000 feet for the Sierra as we get into Wednesday night. And then that's the end of it. High pressure coming in, taking over. All right, let's take a look long-term. What's going on with Baden-Julian oscillation? Though we already talked about that a little bit. And possibly El Nino. As usual, we want to look first at the MJO, looking for signs of the MJO. So we're looking at the TAO buoy array, series of buoys strung across the equator. There's the equator. This is the East Pacific. This is the West Pacific. There's New Guinea. You see the arrows are wind relative wind speeds, 5-day average winds, pretty strong out of the east until you get to about the dateline, 180. And all of a sudden, what do we see? The winds die, and then boom, big, strong arrows suggesting not just, westerly anomalies, full-on westerly winds in the West Pacific. That's certainly a sign of the active phase of the MJO. Looking at anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. Yeah, these easterly winds are brisk, but looking at this, the arrows are saying, nah, that's nothing different than normal, till you get to about a point south of Hawaii, and all of a sudden you see, actually, they're weaker than normal, and we have westerly anomalies, not strong, and then you get at the dateline, and they're strong westerly anomalies, clearly a sign of the active phase of the MJO. And the MJO is this periodic weather oscillation. We'll call it basically the active phase is like a blob of low pressure that moves from west to east across the Pacific. Takes about a month to do it. When it does it, that tends to help support energy transfer to the jet stream, and that in turn helps create storms either north or south of the equator, depending on the time of the year. Atmospherically, it seems like we're more still in summer than winter, and we're thinking that's why the signature of the MJO under New Zealand is stronger, because just atmospherically, yeah, it's still like we're in summer. Just a quick look at winds over the past couple 5 days. There's the equator, South America there. There's Australia. There's New Guinea. So Kelvin wave generation area, 135 west to 170 west. This is the area you want to see west winds. That helps create Kelvin waves. Kelvin waves, if you get enough of them back to back, help create El Nino. So we see westerly wind anomalies on the 24th of September, and you can see the reds and the arrows pointing from the west. Just look down here every day. The past 5 days, been a lot of westerly anomalies. And then here's the 850 zonal wind anomalies. So again, the east-west component of the wind, whole planet on one chart. The date line is right down the middle of the chart. Kelvin wave generation area, that's where we want to see the westerly anomalies. That's basically the West Pacific, from this tick mark to this tick mark, and a little bit east of that. So you just look down, August 31st, we're looking for yellows and oranges. You see westerly anomalies, building westerly anomalies as we get into mid-September. Very strong westerly anomalies here. This is what we'd call a westerly wind burst. That can be associated with the formation of El Nino, and it's just about over. So we saw all that westerly wind. The thought is it's about over today. And what's the forecast now in the Kelvin wave generation area? Looks like easterly anomalies developing for 4 days, then kind of dying out and just going to neutral. Sort of looks like the active phase of the MJO has about done all it's going to do, and it's going to fade. A little bit of a delayed reaction, we think, in the southern hemi under New Zealand, because the storm cycle is still supposed to go for the next week. But after that, it's probably over. So let's look out a little further, okay? Outgoing long wave radiation charts. So instead of looking at wind, we're just looking at the amount of sunlight reflectivity off the ocean surface. If you get a lot of reflectivity, you get positive values, the reds, and that means a clear sky. That means the inactive phase of the MJO. If you get blues, especially in this area, it's Kelvin wave generation area we're interested in, 170 west, 135 east on the equator, 5 degrees north and south. So it looks like the inactive phase of the MJO is developing and forecast to continue solid for the next 2 weeks. Per this, the statistic model, dynamic model, the GEFS model, basically saying the exact same thing. All right, let's go look for some more data. Phase diagram charts. Another way for looking where is the active phase of the MJO and how strong is it. So assume you're looking down on the North Pole, and the MJO moves from west to east from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent, like Bali, across the West Pacific, into the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, then across North Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. Heavy dots where the active phase is, the further away it is from this cycle, the stronger it is. So we'll say a moderate active phase is in the Atlantic right now. And if you've been, again, we say where the active phase is, that's where storm activity is. There is, I think it's Tropical Storm Leslie, which is almost a hurricane, is sitting smack dab in the middle Atlantic. It's almost extratropical, generating winds and seas and all kinds of stuff. It looks like a long run of swell is setting up for the U.S. East Coast. But that's not good for us, because we're over here somewhere, West Pacific. That's where we want to see the active phase of the MJO, but it's in the Atlantic and forecast to stay moderate, moving over Africa and into the Indian Ocean per the ECMF model for the next 2 weeks. The GEFS model, dynamic model, says basically the same thing, just not quite as strong. 40-day upper level model, okay, so where the reds are in this case, this is areas not favorable for precipitation. That's South America there, there's New Guinea, so Kelvin wave generation area right around here. So it looks like inactive phase of the MJO, slowly plodding across the Pacific through the end of October. Basically all October looks like a shutdown. And then you get the greens, which are favorable for precipitation, so one would say the active phase of the MJO, setting up maybe about October 20th, and this runs about a week ahead of what actually happens down at the surface. This is upper level, this is jet stream level. So looks like November, as you get yourself into late October into November, active phase of the MJO. And yet more data, okay? Dateline right there. West Pacific, far West Pacific there. So between these two tick marks, and we're just going down, you see the reds. This is zonal wind anomalies. And this goes back in time a little bit. And you can just see red, 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 red. What's going on? Lots of westerly wind. There's a westerly wind burst. See all the tropical activity associated with that westerly wind burst. Then more westerly winds. Here's where we are today. Good solid westerly wind burst. This is the active phase of the MJO pushing off to the east out of the Pacific. Then you see this dotted line. That's the inactive phase of the MJO starting about October 1st and running through the Kelvin wave generation area till about, say, October 24th or so. And the blues, easterly anomalies. So this is that typical active phase, support for jet stream, energy transfer to the jet stream, storm development. Then things die out for about one to, let's say, 2 weeks, mid-October or so. And then you see the yellows, or the basically yellow, reds, orange, whatever you want to call it, westerly anomalies starting to redevelop. Okay, let's go just a little bit further out into the future. All right, so this is the 3-month version of the CFS model, 850 millibar wind anomalies. The Kelvin wave generation area between these two tick marks going up the chart. Now, this is past history here. The future is looking forward. Westerly wind burst in August. Here's our current westerly wind burst moving out of the Kelvin wave generation area. Then you see, well, we see a little bit of easterly anomalies, and then boom, more westerly anomalies the whole way through the chart. Let's overlay the MJO. Okay, just as we expected. Kind of the weak active phase right now. Here's our pending inactive phase, the dotted lines. Then we go back to the active phase with perhaps a westerly wind burst embedded in that, and then just kind of a dead neutral pattern, but with potential westerly wind bursts embedded in that. Interesting. What is going on? Let's overlay the low-pass filter, and then things become abundantly clear what's happening. So the solid contour here on the low-pass filter, areas supportive of low pressure. We'll call it a low-pressure bias. And it's literally, if that's the far West Pacific, and that's California there, it's literally filling the Pacific as of right now, and this dotted line would be a bias towards high pressure that has been over California, is gone now, and is building over, this is the Indian Ocean. So what this really says is some sort of El Nino-like pattern is developing. This bodes very well for the winter in the North Pacific, and the South Pacific is just now starting to pick up on it. You can see this has been going on since June, trying to organize. But again, we've said this before, the atmosphere is like a big boat. It takes a long time to turn. A bunch of the signs are all lining up, but it's all got to organize. And I think as we get into the, we'll say, mid to late October timeframe and then deeper into November, the pattern will get more established and the atmosphere and the ocean will get coupled. We haven't talked about the ocean yet, but they'll get coupled, and then you'll start seeing El Nino, some potential manifestations of El Nino develop. So we got, what do we say, 3 contour lines here, possibly building to 4 as we get into December. That's typically the peak. Right around Christmas time is the peak of El Nino. This is not going to be a strong one by any means. I mean, if it was, we'd already be seeing signs of it. But no, we're into October. We still don't even hardly have anything that's really like a fall storm traversing the North Pacific. It's still acting like it's summer. So we got the hangover from La Nina in the atmosphere. But The tide is turning. Let's go look in the ocean. Okay, West Pacific here, East Pacific here. This is water temperatures down into the depths of the ocean, down 300 meters, 400 meters. These are the anchor lines on the TA buoy array on the equator. X's are the sensors. You see we have 30-degree Celsius anomalies. That's much warmer. In the far West Pacific, 28-degree isotherm line, pretty much locked in at 160. It's been there for weeks. The 24-degree isotherm line, though, is making steady progress towards Ecuador. It, at one point a couple of weeks ago, is back like 125, maybe even to 130. Now pushing off to the east. That means warm water is on the move. Let's go look at anomalies. Sure enough, here you go. Differences from normal for this time of year. We see a giant bulge of 3 degrees above normal water temperatures, down 150 meters, pushing off to the west. How'd this get here? What's this doing here? Oh, point. No cool anomalies at all on the chart. It's like a river of warm water flowing across the Pacific and starting to erupt on the surface near Ecuador. This is a good sign. So why are we always so preoccupied with the MJO? Why are we so interested in westerly winds in the West Pacific? Because the westerly winds there, or westerly anomalies, when they develop, and if they last for a long enough period of time, especially westerly wind bursts, will take warm water, that warm water there, and start pushing it to the east, but not on the surface. Down below the ocean surface. That warm water will traverse, 4,000 nautical miles under the ocean surface, under the equator, then pop up off of the Galapagos, and then start creating a warm slick on the ocean surface there that the trades then take and drag the whole way back across the Pacific. That is the hallmark of El Nino. Another version of that model saying basically the same thing, only saying the temps here in pockets are up to 4 degrees above normal. Now, one thing this does show is this little pocket of cool anomalies somewhere around 90 west. So what's that, the Galapagos Islands or so? Maybe, but this sometimes runs a little bit behind. We think that may be gone now, and we'll show you why in a moment. Here's another version of that chart. This is in the upper 300 meters of the ocean surface, but it sort of shows you the trend over time, where like a year ago, you see blues are below normal temperatures. This is just the Pacific Basin. In the East Pacific, little Kelvin wave pushed across in January. It faded, didn't do anything, but it cut the legs off of La Nina. There's the upwelling phase of the Kelvin wave cycle. We had a big westerly wind burst in February in the West Pacific, created a Kelvin wave. It sort of stalled and then finally pushed on shore in the July time frame. And then this is right here what we think was the upwelling phase of the Kelvin wave cycle. See that last little bit of cool anomalies there at 90 west. But what is this? Another big batch of very warm water, much larger than the Kelvin wave in February, pushing off to the east. This looks like a Kelvin wave that will arrive in the November-ish time frame. This is what we want to see if you want El Nino to develop. So what's going on at the ocean surface? Well, finally, things are changing for the better. We've had this persistent pattern of, let's just get right to it. This is much warmer than normal water. There's the Galapagos, there's Ecuador, there's our little pocket, the last little bit of the upwelling phase of the Kelvin wave cycle over the Galapagos, fading, we believe fading out. We see warm anomalies starting to develop off of Peru, and a good, steady, elongated area of much warm water on the equator. We want to see this build and get more denser over time, and we think it will. This is probably the very leading edge of that new Kelvin wave number 2 starting to erupt on the ocean surface. We think there is much warm water back over here, 150 meters down, scheduled to come over here, erupt, and then the trades will take all this and push it off in this direction. The official El Nino monitoring region starts right here at 120 west, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, going out to 170 west. So draw a box right there in your mind. So when this warm water starts moving into there, then you'll see that's really kind of the numeric signal of El Nino. But this is a much more interesting, sort of a precursor of what's to come. Water temperature trend. So this is the area, the Nino 1.2 region is just the area like off of Ecuador and the Galapagos. And you see temperatures, they've been down like here forever. Finally, this past week, they spiked up to No, it was like 1.2 degrees above normal. Now they're heading back down, but still, El Nino is only half a degree above normal. We're at 0.774, but this is not the official El Nino monitoring region. This is. And what's today's value? 0.428. Okay, that's not as high as it's been. I think it got like 0.49, but look at this. This was just like 2 days ago. It was up at 0.65 or something like that. So again, half a degree above normal and not steady. That this does not make El Nino, but at least it's a step in the right direction. We want to see these temperatures start bouncing back up and stay there for months on end. A couple days, El Nino does not make. Now you can see this is the trend for the past 7 days. Before, this whole area was littered with pockets of cool anomalies. That's all gone. We have deep warming, at least for the past week here in this area, other than that one little area pocket of cooling in the area from basically the Galapagos on out. There's Hawaii. Pretty broad area there. We'll take it. Now, the backed off view of what's really going on. Yes, there's warming. Yes, it's kind of nice. It's not super impressive, but it's warming. We'll take it. Any warming is a good thing. It's better than cool. So this says at a minimum, La Nina is gone. Is it El Nino? No, not yet. Not warm enough. Limited just to the equator. It needs to get south of the equator. It needs to build over in here as well. Yes, there's a broad area warming here, but it's really 5 degrees north and south of the equator out in this area that it really matters, but we'll stay the whole way to Ecuador. And it's getting there, but we're not El Nino yet. So, is the atmosphere responding to the warm water on the ocean surface, or is something else going on? Well, we look at the Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Tahiti and Darwin. When the index is negative over a period of 2 weeks or so, that suggests the active phase of the MJO. When it's negative, and pretty strongly negative, for months or more on end, that's a sign of El Nino. All right, today, minus 17.53, and has been negative for, since basically coming up on 2 weeks. Certainly looks like the active phase of the MJO. 30-day average, what's the trend? Well, we're down at minus 8.49. Clearly, the active phase of the MJO is driving the 30-day average down. But is it El Nino? Well, we're looking back a whole month, and it's been toggling anywhere from minus 2 to minus 6. We're at minus 8.5 right now, and we already know the active phase of the MJO is fading out, so this is probably as deep as it's going to go. Okay, but let's look really long-term. 90-day, what's the average? Well, we're at minus 4.64. We've been negative in the 3 to 4 range for 90 days, at least, But if you want El Nino, this needs to be down about minus 12 to minus 15 for a minimum El Nino. So we've got a ways to go. What this means is you got to have a bunch of active phases, the MJO, or if nothing else, the MJO disappears and just the whole trend just kind of goes negative. We're heading in that direction, but we're not there yet. And then there's the ESPI index. Instead of difference in pressure between the area north of Darwin, Australia, and we'll say generally north of Tahiti, this is there more or less precipitation in this area than normal? This index, if it's negative, says it's drier here than normal. If it's wetter, if it's positive, that means it's wetter. What we want to see is a positive ESPI index, and pretty markedly so. That would mean that there's warm surface water here, and warm surface water, of course, causes more evaporation. That causes clouds. That causes precipitation. The index today, 0.04. All right, so last week it was down at might have been minus 0.4. So we're back to neutral. We haven't really been positive in 2 years. We were up to, I think, plus 2.4 for a week or something, or even a couple of days 2 weeks ago. Then it went back negative again. So that's when we say this La Nina, El Nino, yin-yang thing is still going on, but now it looks like the trend is at least neutral, pushing, hopefully, towards El Nino. And then finally, sea surface temperature forecast for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region. As of October 1st, it's saying we should be at 0.75. We're not there. We're not even close. We're at point. We're down in here somewhere, but we are positive, just barely. And the trend is for that temperature profile to build to about 1 degree above normal, and then basically holding the whole way through the winter into the spring, then start moderating. This would be El Nino. Not a strong El Nino, moderate El Nino, but, moderate El Nino is better than any kind of La Nina. So and remember, big Kelvin wave under the central Pacific, working its way to the west. I think we will get this spike, this warm spike, at some point. I think this model is overhyping the early arrival time. I think it's going to be more in November when that's going to happen. But it'll happen, and then the atmosphere will respond. So my guess is that we'll see probably a pretty good late fall, let's say mid-November-ish time frame, maybe even Thanksgiving. And once we get there, things will wake up, the Kelvin wave erupts, the atmosphere will respond, and then you're going to see a pretty good bit of surf for the rest of the winter for Hawaii and California, north and south. The jet stream will fall south, and then we could be in business. Rain forecast, too early to know, not betting on it. You got to see a lot of warming right there over the Galapagos. Ocean surface temperature warming. Not sure we're going to see that. I think this might be a bit of a westward displaced warm event, but we'll see. Can never really tell this far in advance. But at least we are not going to have La Nina anymore. So to put a bow on it, there is a little bit of hurricane swell in the water for California, and that's supposed to build into Monday. Nothing huge, but rideable at exposed breaks. Possible good run of, we'll say, small to moderate southern hemi swell, New Zealand swell. If the models verify, if all those little gales push under New Zealand, looking good. A little bit of northwest swell for the Hawaiian Islands, from courtesy of a little gale that pushed over the dateline, and maybe a little bit of that energy working its way into California as well. But lots of wind for anything north of Point Conception starting, we'll say Thursday, all through the weekend. Lots of wind swell, but gosh, don't want the wind swell, want some real solid ground swell and clean ground swell. So we're not quite there yet. And, that high pressure wind swell thing, that's, again, a symptom of La Nina. Still not giving up in the atmosphere yet. It looks like summer's just going to drag on a bit longer, but then when the turn happens, it'll probably happen pretty quickly and pretty dramatically somewhere in the November time frame. So that's it for this week. We'll do it again next week, same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.